Good morning. Welcome to your program, Your Agenda, here on Cignal TV, One News, Channels 8 and 250. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, welcoming you to this Friday episode. And this being a weekend, I do hope you have plans ready and prepared, and that those plans include taking time with your family and of course for yourself as well. Marami po sa atin, puro na lang trabaho, wala nang pahinga. Today, we will be talking about IQ versus EQ, okay? And it will be an interesting discussion because it's not going to be about our EQ or IQ. It would be about how to develop the IQ, EQ, and mental health and intellectual capacities of your children. So hindi pa po huli ang lahat. We will have a specialist to come to your rescue to help you figure out what are the best ways to help your child, your young adults, your teenagers develop EQ, IQ, and why are they important when they become all grown up. So you might say, ay, Sito, alam akong anak kung may apo kayo. And remember, the child of today could be the blessing of tomorrow or the major headache. Baka mamaya kailangan yung magtago ng piyansa, pang-piyansa, or bail money if you don't raise them well. Anyway, let's go to our daily starter. And this, to me, proves that God has a sense of humor. Many of us have goals, have things we want to acquire, to buy, to build, etc. And often in the real life, you come across obstacles, or you even come across a flat no. Okay, I have had my fair share of flat no's. I have had my fair share, even after all the effort, transparency, hard work. At the end of the day, you still get a flat no, or you get the impression that it's not going to work out. Well, today's daily starter is, I believe, God's reminder not to quit just like that. And it's quite simple. There is always a way. Credits to the owner, whoever came up with this, because I just grabbed it from Facebook. And the daily starter for today tells us there is always a way. In fact, we Filipinos have a saying, di ba? Kung gusto, may paraan. Kung ayaw, maraming dahilan. If we really want to get something, there is a way. I wanted to buy a particular product, but the person said, sorry, I don't have enough stock. I have too many buyers. Okay, well, many people in the world, when faced with those kind of obstacles or realities, they turn around and basically said, if I can't buy it, then I'll make it. Okay, so there is always a way. Let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star for a quick review of the news. October 20, 2023, Friday, and as expected, the headline is Blatant Violations Seen on First Day of Campaign. A number of candidates, hindi lang po number, maramihan, partido, okay? A number of candidates blatantly violated Commission on Elections regulations at the start of the campaign period for barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan Elections, or BSKE, yesterday. So that is to be expected. That is tradition in the Philippines. And since we don't put or send people in jail or fine them gazillions, they will continue to do it. Okay, so yung photo na yan, is so typical of many barangays, villages, and residential areas in the Philippines where people essentially put up those tarpaulins all over. And just to complete the story, you even have someone wearing a Spider-Man costume putting up the tarpaulin, and clearly he is putting on the costume so no one will recognize who he is. But that's his candidate. Okay. At the top of the front page, AFP creating cyber command for Philippine online defense. Yan po. The Armed Forces of the Philippines is now preparing for digital sabotage, digital attacks, and of course, to defend the country regarding cyber crimes and attacks like what has happened in many other countries where their systems have been hacked into and placed in great danger. Buti na lang we don't have nuclear power plants here that could be triggered remotely. Okay, anyway, President Bongbong Marcos eyes food energy deals at Saudi summit. President Marcos is expected to push for cooperation in various areas, excuse me, including food and energy security and rules-based international order during the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Gulf Cooperation Council Summit in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, BBM says Maharlika being made near perfect and ideal. Okay. The president said the establishment of the Maharlika Investment Fund is proceeding apace as the measure is just being improved to make it as close to perfect and ideal as possible. According naman to a survey, SWS says 46% of people surveyed see better life in next 12 months. That is so typical of Filipinos. Kahit bagyuhin, bahain, lindulin, abutin ng gutom at hirap, we are still a positive, optimistic country, and the results of the survey reflect that. Meanwhile, South Korean firm offers submarines to the Philippines. Okay, South Korea's Hanwha Ocean Company Limited has pitched offers to build submarines to the Philippines, Canada, and Poland, a company official said on Wednesday, as the country pushes to become one of the world's top defense exporters. Yun po yung South Korea. Sad news for Filipinos, particularly the OFW community. Caregiver confirmed as fourth fatality in the ongoing war between as a result of the attacks in Israel by Hamas militants last October 7. And that was announced by Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo said. However, the family of the slain OFW fourth fatality has requested the identity be withheld. Nakikiramay po kami sa inyo. And the photo that you see there, Israel supporters light candles symbolizing the number of the dead in the Israel-Hamas war while honoring the fallen Filipino caregivers during a gathering in Quezon City yesterday. In relation to the report of a bombing or missile attack of a hospital on the Gaza Strip, intelligence shows Israel not responsible for Gaza hospital strike. U.S. and Israeli officials said their intelligence showed that the deadly blast at a Gaza hospital on Tuesday was caused by an armed Palestinian group rebutting Palestinian claims that an Israeli strike caused the explosion. So there you go. And last but not the least, photo shows Bentley Philippines celebrating their 10th anniversary in the Philippines. So congratulations, Mr. Robert Coyuto, for the 10th anniversary. And we will now go for a quick break. When we return, we tackle the concern about IQ, EQ among Filipinos, especially after a study revealed that we are nowhere near the top in terms of intelligence, IQ, EQ. We are somewhere in the mid-lower portion of the nations studied. We will be right back here on Agenda.
Do you believe that Filipinos have below average intelligence quotient or IQ score? In an earlier report by the US-based independent organization World Population Review, the Philippines has an average IQ score of 81.64, which falls below the global average. Out of all 200 nations surveyed in the study, Filipinos rank 111th. In comparison, Japan, the country with the highest average IQ, had a score of 106.49. In response, the Education Department said they will peruse this study. DepEd also assured the public that they are doing a holistic approach to ensure learning and nutrition to students. What can parents do to help boost their kids' intellectual capacities? And how important is IQ really? Let's further discuss this on today's Agenda.
Dr. Maria Theresa Arranz-Lim is the former president of the Philippine Society for Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics. She was also a founding fellow of the society. Currently, Arranz-Lim is the head of the section of Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics in the Medical City and a visiting consultant at the Cardinal Santos Medical Center.
Good morning, Dr. Arranz-Lim. Welcome to the program agenda.
Good morning, Cito. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for making time. I know that specialists like yourself, you probably have a kilometer long of patients. I have had that experience with my wife. Most often was my wife when we had to consult with a specialist like yourself. And my wife would always say, it's impossible. There's so few of them, and there's so many patients, etc. Has the situation improved? Our daughter is now 23 years old. She's doing very well abroad. But has the situation improved in the Philippines in terms of developmental pediatricians such as yourself?
Well, Cito, there's 91 of us right now, but you see, we have a growing population, and it still is quite a challenge because we have to take time for each patient. We can't just, look at them for 15 minutes and say, go. We have to take an hour and a half, even 2 hours sometimes to just address the issues and to, do a lot of parental counseling because developmental pediatricians wear many hats in the country. It's not like in the US or other developed countries where you do your doctoring and then that's it. You don't have the social workers, you don't have the psychologists and all of these other paramedical therapists around at the same time to do the assessment. So we have to do a lot of these things by ourselves.
You do it all yourself. You do everything by yourself, and then on top of that, you're dealing with a population that is largely unawares. I can't, or ignorant. I don't think ignorant is a malicious word. Largely ignorant about the importance of developmental pediatrics, or child intellect, etc. So, but how did COVID affect all of that? Because pre-COVID, there was already a pileup of kids, especially when the awareness started growing. But then I've heard nightmares about child behavior because of COVID.
Oh, definitely. It took a really bad blow as far as development is concerned for a lot of children. And that's because we were forced to use something that we developmental pediatricians consider an anathema, and that's screen time. And, parents would say, oh, because I'm working from home, I have to put my child in front of the screens. And so they are not able to talk to them, to relate to them properly. And plus the kids that are in school, the stress that they have to go through, just adapting from real life experiences and real life learning to the screen time, which is highly theoretical, is too fast paced. Plus the fact that, kids who tend to want to get out of it. So they'll try to, play and do things on the screen, which are not necessarily good. So yes, and then plus access for those children that need intervention. It was really difficult. I had to even make a certification for some of my children that are autistic that needed to go out. I had to make certification to the subdivisions. Please let them walk around because it's good for their mental health. And so it was really difficult. So access and the forms that we used really took a toll on the children with special needs.
Okay, now this whole thing that this survey that we started the conversation with, it's talking about IQ, EQ. Could you make the distinction? Because I have to confess, I was in elementary when they started talking about IQ tests, etc., and most of us freaked out. Most of us didn't even know what it was. In general, our reaction was, "Oh, they're going to test how stupid or dumb we are."
Well, in deference to the psychologist, an IQ test is usually done by the psychologist, the neuropsychologist. And what it does measure is two types of intelligence, which is the crystallized intelligence, which is what you learn from facts and figures, which you accumulate over the years. That includes rote memory. And then there's fluid intelligence, which is problem solving, applying what you learn. And the thing is, an IQ test can seem static if you only insist on taking it just once. because certain individuals will not do well in a test taking situation, but doesn't mean they're not intelligent. And so it was really quite, sorry for the term, a bummer. During that time, we were probably the same generation. It was not exactly the right thing to do, and just to label after that, because there are scores that you put. It was really not a very good thing to just look at it from one dimension. And as a child development specialist, you don't want to look at just one dimension. And this is very linguistic in its nature. So if you don't have very good verbal skills and you have strong nonverbal skills, or kinesthetic skills for that matter, you won't test very well.
Okay, now, does that mean you don't agree with this survey or this study that was featured that put the Philippines just a little below the median line, or the middle point of the country survey? I mean, it's like we didn't make it to the top 10, of course, but you would think that, hey, we always say, oh, Filipinos are smart, we're literate, blah blah blah. But then when the studies come, I'm sorry, but you failed. I'm sorry, you did not make the top average. You don't agree with these tests?
I think it was unfair because it was probably very one-dimensional. It was probably also in a language that was not necessarily suited for the population that it tested. There's so many factors when you do testing. You can't just take one factor and say that's it. But yes, it's probable that as far as the analysis is concerned, it wasn't very good. And sadly, it was just below the median. 85 is the cutoff for average. So that was really below average or borderline. And I don't like to think that, in fact, it might also be the population that was tested was a little skewed, So he didn't get as much from the top, because we do have highest IQ being a person in the US who is at 16 already, raking it in.
Okay, what makes the difference, Doctor? I don't know if what nickname do I use with you? Theresa, Terry, Ree. Okay, now, Reese, I'm just wondering what makes the difference in developing a child, because you're talking about someone in the States, someone in Europe, or someone in Asia. Culture has a lot to do with how fast children develop, right?
Definitely. And there's a difference because you see, right now you can't dichotomize IQ and EQ. In fact, there's even AQ, which is adversity quotient. I think we'd probably score very high there, as far as you mentioning about us being very resilient and able to face adversity and still laugh about it. So the difference is that it's all in the brain actually, and it just translates into different scores. Like I said, the IQ is generally about the intellectual capacity, the ability to assimilate information. But EQ, which has been found as early as the 70s by Daniel Goleman, has a bigger factor as far as success is concerned. And ultimately, when we think about it, what is success to us? And that's being able to live a fulfilling life in the end. So EQ matters, and EQ is a set of skills that's associated with one's ability to manage emotions, the ability to guide your movements and guide your thinking so that you're able to do productive action. It's learning to work with other individuals. It's learning to work with a team. Well, I guess Japan is good in that, but at least learning to be able to be in harmony with others and understand how others feel. The difference is that in the brain and in a very young child, and there's the 0 to 3 movement, you want to learn to develop the early capacity to be self-aware, to be able to regulate your emotions, to have social skills, empathy, and pro-social behavior, which is what EQ is all about. And EQ is also having to do with regulating your emotions so that you can actually explore the world around you. If you're not emotionally stable or regulated, it's very hard for you to learn because, in the brain, there's this, what you call the hippocampus and the amygdala. they work together to block off memories or to suppress intentional memories. When you're in that particular stress or situation, you're not able to learn very well. Of course, there's always the genetics, there's always the environment, it's all the nutrition. And, sadly, we are a country that has about a fifth that are malnourished. So there's so many factors to consider. But, what we are trying to promote is early development of emotional and intellectual quotients.
Okay, let me cut in here, Dr. Arranz-Lim. I'm gonna get hell for this, but in the Philippines, when a child cries, there are like 10 people in the room. They all want to carry the child, diba? When a child goes into a temper tantrum, it's either a mother or a father will beg the child, please don't shout, it's embarrassing, or will simply say, well, I'm going to leave you here in the mall. You can find your way home, etc. Is
No,
this?
that's really one of the things that we tend to have a problem with, right? Because of the extended family and all the marites and tolits that are around. It's so difficult to discipline a child the right way, or at least to teach them emotional regulation. As early as infancy, they are able to do that if they realize that they can problem solve. And that's one thing that we have difficulty with, is that parents are so caring, overprotective that, umiyak lang ng konti, ibigay na lahat. And that's why it's very difficult. And as a parent, in fairness to the mothers and the grannies and the lolos, it is hard to see a child cry. But, especially for children that are very young, that's the only way they communicate. And you're kind of suppressing their communication skills. You're suppressing their ability to express themselves, and you're also suppressing their ability to self-regulate. So I agree with you, Cito, on that point. And please call me Doc Marie, right?
Okay, Doc Marie, people would say, hey, hello, kinakausap mo yung anak mo. And I've experienced this, because my wife is from the Netherlands. So the upbringing for our daughter was very different. But, people would say, how can you talk to a child that's 2 years old, 3 years old? They don't even know the difference. And I said, believe me, they're a lot smarter than you. Would you agree with that, Dr.
Oh,
Marie?
definitely. They are so smart. They can actually manipulate you at that age. Children as early as 6 to 9 months old, they can already manipulate you. But ayaw nila sa'yo, they'll just close their eyes and turn away. That's already a signal that I don't like you. And then what do the parents do, or what do the grannies do? Oh, talagang super, super kulit, diba? When in fact, you're supposed to learn to respect the child, because the child is saying, hey, I've had enough. Let me just keep out of this situation. Let me just regulate myself, So we need to learn that. And that's something that we have to be mindful of. And that's really a problem when you're not able to listen to the signals. In fact, the Harvard Center for a Developing Child is talking about the response to all of these cues as being the serve and return pattern as being very critical in emotional and intellectual development. And so that's really what we need to do, is to be able to listen to the cues and pay attention and respond appropriately to them, rather than just give in to what we think they know. I mean, you talk to them and they will understand. You start talking to a baby at 3 months and they'll coo at you. You talk to a baby at 6 months and they'll smile if they like, they'll turn away if they don't like. By 1 year old, they start doing all these baby tricks because they like the idea that you're so engaged in them, and you're squealing in joy when they start, making all these baby tricks.
Yeah.
You talk to them.
You're going into this interview, I was thinking our conversation would be, how do we develop the child? How do we teach the child so we can develop their intelligence, how to make them smart people? But in the few minutes I've talked to you, Dr. Marie, my impression is it's the parents and the grandparents and the titos and the titas who need to be educated, not the child.
Very true, because, the chance for the child to learn has to do with the environment. And guess what? The essential environment are the parents and the grandparents and the caregivers and whoever's there and the siblings. So it's really the environment that will help. There is a phrase, nurture trumps nature. So sometimes if we are not able to do the proper nurturing, no matter how smart they will not be able to develop. So yes, the environment is definitely an important factor there as far as developing EQ and IQ.
Okay, Dr. Marie, we'll go for a quick break. When we return, I'd like to ask you to bring us through the most important part. Can we actually raise the child or help the child develop so they have the intellectual advantage, make them geniuses like that TV series, about a bunch of guys who are all geniuses but with no lives, etc. But we'll go for a quick break. We'll return here on Agenda.
Due to perceived ineffectiveness and a shift in parental values. In the United States, over 90% of parents now prioritize raising emotionally stable, empathetic children capable of navigating a complex world. In short, emotional intelligence has become the new focus. According to experts, there are several habits for parents to pick up on when aiming to raise emotionally successful children. These habits include recognizing developmental disconnects in children's emotional understanding, communicating through play, encouraging self-compassion, understanding the relationship between body language and speech, talking openly about emotions, and asking for input rather than telling. Researchers have also been attempting to design toys to boost young children's emotional intelligence to help them better handle their feelings and improve their interaction with others. Why exactly is emotional intelligence important for a child's development? Let's discuss that further on today's agenda.
And with us is Dr. Theresa Marie Arranz-Lim. Doc Marie, so what exactly are the parents of today supposed to do if they decide, well, every Filipino wants a bright kid, a smart kid. what are they supposed to do?
Well, you want to start early with responsive parenting, which is you want to listen to the cues that the child has and understand what it means. The communicative intent is so important. And sometimes we tend to dictate what the child wants when we actually should listen for what they want so that they can be very secure and know that you will be behind them no matter what. Secure attachments are so important, the ability to explore.
Okay,
And
allow me to cut in here, Doc Marie. I know people who rely on yayas. What's your comment about that?
you know what? You need to empower your yayas. You need to make the yayas want to empower the child. The problem is that we have no choice as far as yayas is concerned. But the thing is, we also want to be sure that the yayas are not putting them in front of the screen, but actually playing with them, giving them opportunities. You have to give the yaya a little bit of ability to determine what is good for the child as well. Outdoor play is so underused these days, and that's so important, especially for young children, because they need to develop their motor skills, they need to develop their problem-solving skills, and that's where they do it, outdoor play. Eh, syempre si Yaya, ayaw madumihan, ayaw...
Magkakabulati yan, sir. Pinalalakad mo sa lupa.
Oo, that kind of thing is really problematic for me, and plus we don't have a lot of safe spaces for them. There aren't very many parks. What we have are just air-conditioned malls, and ayaw nilang nadudumihan. Gusto nila kakain ka agad, so yayas will just feed them rather than let them make a mess and let them feed themselves, things like that, So the child does not feel very capable, and they don't feel very capable of exploring the environment. So that's something that we have to understand, and we have to make children do that. And sadly, there's such a premium on studying, and there's no opportunity for play. And the kind of play that we do is screen time play, which is actually it's very detrimental for emotional intelligence and for emotional health, because it's mostly stress related. It causes your eyes to have strain. It causes you to have poor motor development. And children now obesity is on the rise. And that's also one reason, because children would rather play with their gadgets than play outside. Plus, the social emotional development, the learning to pick up on social cues with your friends, learning to play and be picon, or to stand up when you fall on your knees and all of that. Those are things that you need to learn there's no opportunity for that because of no opportunity for all of this outdoor play. Plus, play is the occupation of a child, and that's where they learn. They learn, for example, from gadgets, nothing except, linguistic things. But if they learn how to use a stick and use it as a microphone, use it as a tungkod, use it as a weapon, then you're teaching the child creativity and all of this. And that happens when you're doing it outside.
Yeah, because yesterday we interviewed a gentleman who had who has invested so much in computer literacy, and he was sharing a video that's been going around of a baby, of a toddler who was given a book. And when the toddler got the book, he was trying to swipe left or scroll, and then couldn't figure out what was wrong, why it wasn't doing what he wanted, because the child didn't know that it's a book, not a tablet. So that's where we're going. But can I just ask very specific question? Parents 0 to 1. They invest so much on these things that hang on the crib, a lot of colorful stuff, Barbie bedrooms, etc. Some people are arguing that colors is great for children. And I know in Europe, at least from the 0 to 3 months, they say they don't know the difference between colors. Black and whites would be better. Cartoon black and whites would be better. What's your response?
Well, in the beginning, when they're infants and 0 to 3 months old, usually they only discriminate high contrast, which is why black and white is the thing. But when they're older, colors are fine. And the thing is, even with these things that hang there, you need to be very interactive. If the baby has all of these things, but they don't know what to do with it, and there's no one to teach them what to do with it, to touch it so that it makes a sound, to touch it so that it runs around, it turns around, and all of this, then it's useless to have all these toys and gadgets. It needs to be something interactive to learn something, and that's what we're trying to do. Is that we want to advocate for people to interact with the babies, to talk to the babies. They'll say, "Oh, nagsasalita naman si Teacher sorry, si Teacher Rachel. I hope I'm not for libel. No, Teacher Rachel and all these gadgets." Yeah, but that's a flat screen. They know what a circle looks like, but do they know that a circle can be a ball, can be a cylinder, you learn that if you're touching it, you're throwing it, you're shooting it, you're biting it. You don't learn that from a flat screen.
Okay, so at what age is it acceptable for a child to be given a tablet? I've heard and read 2 years old and above, and limited time up to 5 years old. For specialists such as yourself, what is the rule?
Well, that's screen time. We're talking about screen time, and the recommendation is before 0 to 2, you don't give any screen time, and beyond 2 years old, 1 hour, of interactive screen time, which means you comment. There's a person in front of you who's commenting, who's actually trying to point out what the object means, and all of this. And then at age 3 to 5 years old, maybe 2 hours, but again, it's still kind of interactive in its nature. You don't want to give them too much screen time because there's a lot of health issues that could come out with that. Health, sleep, eating, hyperactivity, all of these come out when you have too much of this screen time. So yeah, when is the acceptable time? Honestly, I'm a little conservative. I would rather not have them do screen time if they can help it until much older, like, when they're in school age, when they necessarily have to have screen time. If you can have no screen time and teach them give them books rather than screen, that would be even better. But, that's not the reality we're facing right now. So.
Okay, now what about selection of schools? Because we're talking about how to develop a child's intellectual capacity. Selection of school, because there are, in the Philippines, wow, he went to the university or this private school, but for toddlers, for grades 1 to 5, what do the developmental pediatricians recommend? A traditional school, a creative school? Where would you send your kids?
I'm a product of a traditional school, and I still think there's merit to it, but it depends on the learning style of the child. If the child is a linguistic learner and likes to read, likes to, write and all of that, and to, and interact with the teacher that way, then the traditional school is probably the way to go. But if they're very kinesthetic, they like to touch, to feel, to hold and experience, and the non-traditional school would probably be the better way to go.
How do you, sorry, Doc Marie, how do you tell? Because, from early on, my daughter was a touchy-feely person. She loved to put glue in her hands, Elmer's glue, let it dry, and then she would peel it. She would love coloring. My wife had a lot to do in influencing her, but that was her nature. She liked looking at details. How do you tell what school?
That's exactly it. You were describing someone who would probably enjoy a non-traditional school, and there are two types. There's the child-led and there's the teacher-led, depending on how much of a goal you have for the education of your child. But it's really important that the child is able to do what they like to do best, because children will not be forced to learn if they like the learning environment. So yeah, the traditional school for most kids, because they like the routine, they like the predictability, they like to be told what to do, they will enjoy that. But you also have to be able to understand that the child also needs to learn to problem solve, to listen, to think about what they're learning, and not just regurgitate information like a lot of times we tend to see among the traditional schools. They're not all the same, but
Yeah.
a lot of them are like that. They just rely on rote, and which is really sad because that's the lowest form of intelligence.
Earlier, you made mention of was it Scandinavia regarding no books, or I mentioned Japan, no assignments up to grade 2 or grade 4 or something. Now, what is the reading in the Philippines? Because I don't know if I'm just being critical, but I've said, why is it that we force children to fit into our schedules? Meaning, because Papa and Mama are employees who have to be at work at 8 or 9, children have to get up at 5 so they can take the school bus, and we can send them off when we go off to work, and the children are only allowed out of school in alignment with adults' schedules, and also the pressure. I remember a few years ago, pressure became the reason why students in Japan were essentially, committing suicide or having mental breakdowns. What is the situation in the Philippines, and is there an alignment of what should be done with the developmental pediatrics?
Again, we have to go back to the test that was used, right? And it
Mhm.
used to be that the tests that they used, the reading tests, were just for decoding, which is just reading the word. But when you're talking about reading, you have to do reading and reading comprehension.
Mhm.
And if I remember right, the last I checked, which was a long time ago, the reading level of Filipinos is grade 4, okay, which is not very, very promising. And the thing is, you see, we don't really read. I don't know if you notice that Filipinos don't tend to read signs, whether they are on the road
You
or
make
in
me
the
laugh.
mall.
You make me laugh because that
Oh,
is always the family comment. Will you please read the sign?
yes. And the sad part is because we teach decoding without teaching comprehension that goes with decoding, which is reading, which is why it's so hard like I said, the Scandinavian countries, they introduce reading at a later time, but they make sure it's reading with comprehension. And that's, I think, something that will probably reflect on the test scores we have, because you see, if they don't comprehend the question, how can they answer it appropriately? So yeah, it's
Ayun.
a really
Okay.
sad thing.
Let's do a quick break, and when we return, your final thoughts on the subject, and we'll be right back here on Agenda. We're having a very interesting conversation regarding parenting, child development, IQ and EQ with pediatrics, developmental pediatrician specialist, Dr. Marie Theresa Arranz-Lim. Dr. Arranz-Lim, or Dr. Marie, let's continue our conversation. We were talking about EQ, IQ, about parenting. Now, we left off with choosing schools, etc. But what are your putting you on the doctor's chair once again? What are the things you would like parents to keep in mind and society?
Well, basically, on the topic of EQ and IQ, you really want to understand that they go hand in hand. And it's important that emotional development, emotional quotient, and adversity quotient is really developed. So you want to work on self-management skills, being able to manage yourself, be able to be capable of doing things that are developmentally appropriate, like for a toddler, feeding themselves, going potty, and all of that. For a preschooler, being able to cooperate and play in a safe environment. For a school-age child to be able to learn to read, write, and learn from reading and writing. And in adolescents, to learn to be more responsible, to take control of certain urges that they have, and all of this. That's all management and self-awareness. Being able to understand your emotions, where they're coming from. What is important is how they manage their emotions, how they regulate their emotions, and how to be able to manage themselves by themselves and in a group, to be making responsible decisions even at a young age. Choosing between getting getting sick because you're insisting on playing and resting when you have to, drinking when you're thirsty. Being self-aware is important as far as that's concerned.
Yeah,
Skills.
not just being self-aware, but also being aware of the consequences. I have made that my particular mission or focus with my daughter when she was growing up. I would sit her down and I tell her, okay, you want to do this. These are the realities and these are the consequences. If we buy this or if I take you here, I will not be able to do this or we can't do this and that, etc. So she grew up realizing consequence, so that it got to the point that when she was a young adult, I would say, consequence. What are the consequences? And she would just process it by herself. I've also observed, even for myself, that many of the things we want in life, many of the things we chase after or upsets us or holds us back are the things we were denied or couldn't have in childhood, but they were never explained to us.
Yeah, that's true. Going back to that point of consequences, that's part of actually executive function, which is kind of closely and intimately related to EQ and IQ. Executive functions happen in the brain, in the prefrontal cortex, the brain part that develops last, and that includes task orientation, task initiation, monitoring what you do, and also living with the consequences and being flexible about whether the consequences were worth it or not, and being able to regulate from there.
So it's no big science or no complex science. Our parents, our grandparents told us, when you get out of bed, make your bed. After you make your bed, you go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you wash your face. They gave us a series of tasks, which became disciplines, which just became the part of the way we do things. So, because when I started our interview, I was thinking, wow, what kind of science is Doc Marie going to be telling us? It's all life tasks.
Right. It's really actually a lot of common sense and a lot of, old school science, basically. It's just that the science has caught up with what value system we should be espousing. Discipline comes from the word disciple, which means follower. And that means that you need to know to do right because that's the right thing to do. Not because you have to, but because it's the right thing to do. And that takes a lot of time. So you model that as a young child. You teach them that this is the right thing to do. And then when they are able to judge for themselves that that's the right thing to do, they do it. So it's really a lot of old school wisdom that comes from that is now being caught up by science. So EQ, IQ, that's all old school actually.
And these are the stuff that's being taught in Japan, in Scandinavia, in parts of Asia, etc., where they excel. And while we here in the Philippines are talking about so many other subjects that should be put into the curriculum, but not these developmental oriented subjects.
Right. Like, for example, GMRC. I don't want to institutionalize that. That's something you should learn at home. And that's something that you should live at home, in school, or everywhere. Even our Filipino, it's lamentable. I'm sorry I have to say it. It's lamentable because people don't love the Filipino language because it's so difficult. And so how will you love your country if you don't love your language? I mean, these are some basic things that I think we should be looking at rather than looking at test scores, which, are very static, are very judgmental, are not even, going to help you to move forward to what should we do next.
Okay, well, that's interesting, Doc Marie, and I do hope we can continue this conversation in other episodes. And please let us know if there are new things you want to talk about, because I think this is what has to be done. Simplify the process, the concepts, but at the same time, elevate the level of discussion. Thank you very much, and God bless you and your associates for the work you do for the future of our children. And please stay healthy. Take care.
Thank you very much, Cito, for this opportunity to really advance our advocacies. And we hope more people will heed our cries and our advice about enjoying their children. They are a gift from the Lord. They need to learn the right thing to do so that the children will do right.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc Marie. And now let's go to our closing prayers. But before that, just a reminder, as Doc Marie Arranz-Lim pointed out, you need to take the children outdoors. Wag po puro semento ang suelo, puro carpet, puro kahoy. Palakarin nyo sa lupa. I did that to my daughter. Now she is tough, ready, and going around in all sorts of places. So bring your child outdoors. It'll be good for them. Let's go to our final prayer for the week, and it is a favorite prayer of mine, the prayer of Jabez from the First Chronicles, chapter 4, verse 10. Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. Thank you very much for joining us here on Agenda. Please include Team Agenda in your prayers, and God bless all of you. Kindly keep it here on One News.